Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this presentation on the scheme known as Bring Your Own Device, or BYOD for short. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Staite, and I'm the Chief Information Officer here at Anfield & Associates Chartered Accountants. Today's presentation is broken down into two main sections. The first section is an explanation of BYOD as a program, how it is utilised and associated risks. I'll also evaluate the advantages and disadvantages of this type of IT program, whilst also introducing some best practice procedures for implementing a BYOD system into a firm such as this one. To provide real-world support to what I will be talking about, I've researched the effects that BYOD has brought to a large manufacturing company with somewhat surprising results. I'll also run through some basic ideas of the infrastructure required to implement such a scheme without trying to bore you with the technical IT details. The second section of this presentation deals with the financial aspects of investing in this type of project. I've calculated the necessary data to put forward the case of implementation while running a sensitivity analysis using three specific scenarios relating to BYOD to prove its case, and giving some suitable insight into the key areas to be focused upon to ensure a financially viable project. I will finalise my business case with some conclusions, as well as the lessons learned whilst putting this presentation together. The purpose of this presentation is to 1. Provide you with a better understanding of BYOD, 2. To request your consideration as a board to implement BYOD into this firm, and 3. To provide you with some lessons that I've learned while researching this project, so that you may learn more about the information technology and information security aspects of this business. Let's begin by discussing exactly what is BYOD and what this policy would mean to this company. BYOD is a policy that allows or encourages the use of mobile devices and notebook PCs for business purposes in place of traditional company-provided phones and computers. Employees agree to use their favoured personal devices to access company data and operating systems on a company network via Wi-Fi. A software program integrates these devices with the company network, allowing each user to access all or a portion of the data and systems that they would traditionally be able to access from a company PC. Generally, within a large organisation, there is a hierarchy structure. This structure generally denotes what level of access staff members have to certain data and systems within the network. This already happens and would be similar under BYOD scheme. There are 4 basic options for access to the network depending on employees' level of granted access. These levels are generally one of the following. 1. Unlimited access to personal devices. 2. Access only to non-sensitive systems and data. 3. Access but with IT control. 4. Access but preventing local storage of data on the device. My recommendation to the firm would be to use a combination of these access levels, but without any local storage of data, regardless of the position of the employee. As you can imagine, the main risk that will be associated with this type of IT policy is a data security threat. Company and client information falling into the wrong hands would not only affect the business from a commercial standpoint, it also involves some dangerous legal implications. These threats are generally broken down into 2 categories: external and internal threats. External threats are those which originate from outside the company. They can include individuals using the limited security of a mobile device to hack into the company network, or the non-company applications contained on these personal devices containing viruses that can corrupt or compromise the firm's business systems. Internal threats, on the other hand, are those in which an employee of the company knowingly or unknowingly distributes confidential information to outside sources. One example of this would be a situation where an employee either resigns or is terminated. As the device is the employee's own personal property, it can prove difficult to regain sensitive company material. This could potentially be passed on to new employers, which could be a main competitor for this company. Now, don't be too disheartened by these risks, as I'll explain to you ways to greatly minimise these using a combination of software, policies and best practice. I haven't had a chance yet to talk about the advantages of a BYOD program. I would mainly concentrate on the risks associated with implementing the system. However, the positives do outweigh the negatives, as you will see. The advantages of a BYOD are many. I will first discuss the advantages to the employee and then move on to the advantages for the company. Employee advantages include greater freedom, which it gives the employee the choice of what device they prefer to use. Greater convenience. By using their own personal device, it cuts out the unnecessary need for employees to constantly carry 2 mobile phones and sometimes even 2 laptops, and increased job satisfaction. Studies have shown that just by being able to choose the devices that the employee uses at work, they are more satisfied at work and also willing to perform work duties outside of typical work hours. Now let's consider the advantages to the company. Reduced hardware costs. Employees provide the hardware instead of the company. Shifts cost to the user. It has been shown that employees who are able to use their own devices are happy to foot the bill. Other companies provide a stipend, however this cost is much lower than that of the company providing the technology. Improved productivity. Employees are more willing to work harder and continue business communications outside standard work hours. And users update hardware and software more frequently. Users are able to update more frequently than a company would be able to, meaning that the company always has cutting-edge technology in use to gain a competitive advantage over its rivals. In some industries in the US, research shows an uptake of over 70% of this type of scheme. The long-term cost savings for the company is substantial, as I will illustrate later on in the presentation. I'd next like to mention the disadvantages of BYOD to provide a balanced argument. These include introduction of a higher information security risk, that can be external or internal risk as previously mentioned. Organisations lose some control of the company's IT system. Employees choose a device of their preference and therefore the company lets users set the IT standard and not the other way around. It's much harder to control what an employee does with their own device. The employee controls ownership of the device, so it can be more difficult to control how they are to use their devices when conducting non-business functions. The employee leaving the company can take sensitive data with them. As the employee owns the device and takes it with them upon leaving the company, it can prove difficult to regain all company data from their device. This is where the restriction of not being able to store company data locally would be advantageous. If a user decides to leave the firm, their privileges to the network can be revoked, blocking any access to the network or any of the company data. And finally, more help desk services cater for a larger range of devices. To ensure a large range of devices are compatible with the company network, more IT support will be needed to ensure a smooth operation. Each of the disadvantages mentioned can be overcome with an introduction of a range of software systems, written policies, and best practices for managing a BYOD system. The BYOD scheme is still very much growing as an industry. The best practices associated with proper management of personal devices are therefore constantly evolving. The following practices are about maximising the experience for both the company and employees. The first one is a large range of devices should be able to utilise the scheme. This encourages maximum uptake. The company should also reimburse users for a portion of their devices' network costs. A clear policy should state which devices are compatible, as it would be unreasonable to expect the company to cater for every single device on the market, especially those that don't support business applications. Number 2, any BYOD policy should have input from across the entire company. IT staff, end users, software developers, executives, legal and HR staff should be involved in the policy development stage to ensure that everyone is on the same page about what can and can't be accessed with personal devices. Number 3, policies should be clear about the rules of joining, leaving or altering participation in the program. All policies should be legal and agreed upon before users can take part. Devices should be able to be locked if they become lost, stolen or compromised. Number 4, many new smartphones and tablet computers with advanced features such as GPS or video recording devices. These features should be considered when developing BYOD policies and software. And number 5, Top executive staff must abide by the BYOD policies, as they generally have access to more highly sensitive information and therefore present a greater security risk. There are other best practices for managing BYOD, however they are of a more technical nature and can be discussed at a later date. I'd like to give you an example of a company who has adopted the BYOD program and found it to be very beneficial to their company. For those of you who don't know, Intel is an American multinational semiconductor chip manufacturing company. Their chips are found in most PCs around the world. Intel started the BYOD trend within their company in 2009. The leaders within the company were quick to embrace this trend in order to cut costs and improve productivity of their staff. By 2014, Intel expects that 70% of their employees will be using their own devices for at least part of their day-to-day duties. Intel involved all their employees in developing effective policies to govern BYOD use as mentioned. This allowed them to write policies that the employees were more likely to find relevant to the tasks they perform. The payback for Intel is threefold. Number one, it got better productivity. They found that employees started responding to communication faster. Number two, improved security. This was quite surprising, as security is generally seen as a disadvantage to BYOD. Intel found that a large number of users provided mobility that allowed the company to respond, contain and recover from security incidents more quickly. And finally, greater control. Another area which goes against the common perception of BYOD. Because Intel encouraged personal device use, their IT department is able to keep track of these devices on their system, whereas previously a similar number of employees were using their personal devices at work, but using the system in an unauthorised manner. There are four key areas to consider when implementing a BYOD system. These include Role-Based Access Control, or RBAC. Wireless networks must be able to segment users into groups based upon who the user is, i.e. their position within the company and their access rights, and what type of device they are using. This allows the user to access only the content which has been approved for their use. Capacity versus coverage. The uptake of BYOD will see a spike in devices requiring Wi-Fi access. Instead of some employees having one or two wireless devices, most will want to access the network with potentially three separate devices, for example, a smartphone, a tablet computer, and a notebook PC. The network will need upgrading to allow this, which would result in costs associated with new routers and switches, and firewalls and wireless network elements would need to be reconfigured. Application level filtering. Next generation firewalls are capable of knowing which sites and applications users are trying to access and limiting certain functions in order to allow enough bandwidth for higher level applications. For example, the firewall can limit the bandwidth to an employee watching YouTube videos on their lunch break to allow a senior executive to operate important decision-making dashboards and applications. And finally, directory services and device registration. The network would require a database to record all users, groups and devices registered to each user. This allows the network to keep track of each device and ensure only the employee who owns the device can access the network. If I could now direct your attention to the spreadsheet shown on the slide. What I would like to demonstrate is the financial viability of this project by costing the project over a 6-year period, as well as calculating various capital budgeting techniques to prove its worth. I will also perform a sensitivity analysis to focus on areas which will need to be carefully controlled whilst implementing this program in order to maximise its value to the company. As you can see, we have the years of the project along the top, with the costs and benefits of the program down the left hand side. As can be seen by the cash flows from year to year, the project becomes more and more profitable as time goes on. The main constants are the costs of policy development, software acquisition, support and training, while the benefits increase from year to year. This is due to employees gaining a better understanding of the system and utilising it to its full potential. The payback period of the scheme is 5 years, which is significant. However, the 6 years shows a cash inflow of $12.9 million, demonstrating that after the payback period, there are good profits to be made by implementing BYOD when compared to maintaining a traditional IT system. The internal rate of return is 11.981%, which is very good for the current economic climate, and the profitability index of 1.145 suggests that this is a very sound investment. I performed a sensitivity analysis for 3 specific scenarios of consideration. You can see for the first scenario that I've used the same spreadsheet as was previously shown, but with the scenario for consideration shown in red. This scenario aims to determine the effects to the business if the policy development and maintenance of the scheme was increased from $6 million to $6.5 million in years 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. These changes to the input values can be seen in red. This scenario paints a different picture to that of the initial spreadsheet. With the increased cost of policy development, the net present value has reduced from a surplus of $1.458 million to a deficit of $437,000. The internal rate of return is less than the discount rate, and a profitability index of 0.956 suggests a cautious approach should be taken with this investment. This specific scenario demonstrates the need to keep the policy development and maintenance on budget. This spreadsheet is a valuable tool in determining the key areas to ensure that the project is driven on budget and the financial advantages to maintaining this focus. The second scenario of the sensitivity analysis can be seen on the spreadsheet now shown on the screen in blue. The scenario determines the effects of a slower uptake of the scheme, resulting in no increases in profitability until the second year of the project. This lack of an increase to profitability further decreases cash flow in the first year, having an effect on the payback period. It does, however, maintain the positive net present value, while the internal rate of return is still in good shape at 10.727%. The profitability index for this scenario is 1.054, suggesting that even if no increases in profitability occur in the first year, as long as they maintain an upward trend beyond this point, the project is still very much financially viable. The final specific scenario devised for the sensitivity analysis is now shown on the final spreadsheet in green. This scenario tries to determine the financial implications if the cost of training were more significant in the first 3 years of the project than previously expected. This scenario is quite unrealistic, as the notion of employees using the device of their choice should result in a reduction of training costs. But for the purpose of a robust analysis, I will also include a scenario. As can be seen in the green numbers, training was increased to $1 million for the first 3 years, up from $300,000, $500,000 and $100,000 respectively. While the resulting net present value is only half the deficit of the first scenario at $268,000, and the internal rate of return is only slightly under the discount rate at 9.647%, it is still an unwanted scenario for an investment of this scale. The project would be less financially viable under these conditions. However, as previously stated, these training costs are highly unlikely, and this highlights another area where attentiveness is vital to the success of the scheme. As shown in the preceding slides, BYOD can be a very advantageous tool in developing a cutting-edge IT system for the firm without the costs associated with upgrading the entire IT system. By having employees cover the costs for a large portion of their business devices, the company saves a significant amount of money whilst utilising the most up-to-date devices on the market. Not only will the cost benefits be significant, but the satisfaction of employees, while not easily quantified, will benefit the business and its clients exceedingly. Today I'm asking the board to consider my proposal to implement the BYOD program within this firm. The financial aspects of implementation are sound and the risks associated with the system are quite low. This scheme has been introduced into many other companies with great success, so there is no reason to predict that it won't have equal benefits here at Anfield and Associates as well. I'm proposing a trial of the scheme involving 50 employees from all divisions within the company for a year-long period in order to prove the financial aspects, whilst minimising exposure that a company-wide rollout would bring. I'd suggest a scheme where all employees have equal input towards the policies and where no employee can store company data on their personal device. I also suggest providing a security system that protects not only the device, but also the data on the company network. The best practices for BYOD management can further help to implement the system in a safe and economical method. I think you would all agree that BYOD is the way of the future, and by getting in ahead of our rivals, this will keep us competitive for many years to come. While researching this topic, I came across some very interesting and sometimes surprising facts. One of the most surprising came from researching Intel's implementation of BYOD. The fact that they find it to provide better security and control over their IT system is fascinating. Any breach of the company network could be remedied by shutting down the affected part of the network until the threat has been eliminated. Until the system is fully functional again, employees could use their devices and the data and systems installed on them to continue working without losing business capability. Another area where I learnt a great deal was in policy development. By incorporating all sectors of the firm to create policies, you gain a better understanding of each employee's viewpoint and are more likely to develop a policy that is meaningful, rather than one that would only satisfy the legal department, for instance. When employees feel that they have input towards a company matter, it makes them engage with the topic and they are more inclined to abide by its rules. Lastly, the final factor I found interesting was the notion that employees would be satisfied to cover all costs associated with using their personal devices at work. The personal satisfaction is that important that they would be willing to spend their money for business purposes. Of course, best practice suggests that the company should provide a stipend to cover part of this cost, but this idea is a very important factor, not just for IT policy, but for motivating employees in general. This is a slide of references used in my research. You may pause to get a better understanding of this. I'd like to thank you all for attending this presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Thank you.